Please rise in body and or spirit for our gathering hymn, Break Not the Circle. Donald play it through the tune once, and then let's go for it.
A warm welcome to you all here and those watching us anywhere online. I am Dayna Tortelli. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Sarasota. We especially want to welcome our visitors both on campus and those on live stream. We encourage you to find out more about Unitarian Universalism by visiting our website or by stopping by the welcome table outside the sanctuary doors. On our website, you can fill out our virtual guest book so that you can get our weekly newsletter, The Contact, which has information on all the many things that are going on here. Of course, if you're here on campus, we encourage you to complete the visitors form at the welcome table and join us at our visitors conversation table in the courtyard after the service during our coffee hour. All visitors are able to participate in all our events, and we look forward to getting to know you. We are an active congregation. You may have noticed the purple bus in the parking lot. Shelf Indulgence is a rolling bookstore that features books of all genres, including a good selection of books that have been banned in Florida schools. So please check them out after the service. Okay, our congregation is thrilled to co-sponsor with the Patterson Foundation a film showing of the one-act play, A Walk to Respect, followed by a live panel discussion here in this church on Saturday, this coming Saturday, September 30th, starting at 6:20 for opening comments. This play is about the relationship of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass as they faced their differences, moving from conflict to understanding. This is a free event, and seating is limited, however, so please get your tickets, and you can do that if you haven't already out at the social justice table after the service. Each month, the Social Justice Committee selects one organization to be the recipient of our offering. 100% of today's offering will go to the Minnesota Asala Freedom School. I invite Jennifer Joseph up here to tell you more about it.
Thank you, Dayna, and good morning. Today's theme of forgiveness with reflection on repair and repentance seems an appropriate context for me to be telling you a little bit about the Freedom School. Some of you participated in the forum last week when the lead teacher for the school was able to speak much more fully about Freedom School and respond to some of the questions. Today I just get a couple of minutes to say something about Freedom School. So I know you're all familiar with developments in Florida because we are being bombarded with the news, and if you aren't, people from out of state are calling you, right? Friends, and asking you, what's going on? Why are you still there? I certainly am getting those calls. But just in case, a quick run through. Last month, state leaders passed new Black history standards for Florida's public schools, in which students must learn that some Black people benefited from slavery because it taught them useful skills. In May, DeSantis signed legislation that prohibits colleges from spending public funds on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. In the months prior, he signed into law the Stop Woke Act, which restricts how workplaces and schools can discuss race, and blocked an advanced placement African American Studies course in the state's public schools, claiming that it lacked, and I quote, educational value. So along comes ASALH, and some of you would be familiar with ASALH, and that acronym stands for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, an organization that was founded more than 100 years ago by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was the second African American to obtain a doctorate from Harvard, the first being Dr. W.B. Du Bois. And Dr. Carson, back over 100 years ago, knew that preserving and promoting and conducting research about Black history was an essential part of our nation and our nation's history and our education. So ASALH was founded, and I'm happy to tell you that Minnesota is now the largest branch of this national organization, and all are welcome to join. And I can certainly share with you a flyer and the website. You would find more information about ASALH. Some of you would be familiar with the Mississippi Freedom Summer movement, out of which came the Freedom Schools. I believe some of you participated in the civil rights movement and may even have taught in those freedom schools, which primarily served African American children, but also adults, teaching not just literacy and numeracy, but also civil rights. And of course, that was essential to provide information that they were not getting in their schools. So here we are in 2023, and again, we are confronted with initiatives to block, to erase, to misinterpret the teaching of Black history. And so ASALH immediately stepped up back in the spring and offered a pilot program. It ran for 10 weeks in which the truthful Black history was taught. Again, I will be happy to provide more details about that. We attracted students from about 15 schools and about 40 different families, and we got a very enthusiastic support from the community. Some of you may have seen the Herald Tribune carried an article that was entitled, "Hidden Stories and Truths Need to be Told." So what we're about to do now is to continue after the success of the pilot program, and one of the things I would highlight is the tremendous volunteer support. We had a wonderfully diverse group of adult volunteers who stepped up and came Saturday after Saturday, and I would say also snuck in on the classes because many of them also wanted to learn alongside the students, as did their parents. So we are planning to launch a new session on November the 4th, and again, unfortunately, this is a very brief presentation, but I'll be here afterwards. I'll be very happy to answer any other questions you might have. I just want to say how many of us, especially after the George Floyd murder, had occasion to say about Black history, I didn't know that, I never heard of that, or perhaps you'd been misinformed about a certain incident. Well, here we have an opportunity now to give what I consider one of the most precious gifts we can to our children, something we didn't have, perhaps some of us didn't have, the opportunity together, regardless of race, regardless of background, to learn the true history of our country, something which is vital, I think, especially as we seem to be becoming more and more divisive. Something is vital, bringing us all together, starting with the younger generations and hopefully planting seeds for what will be a much better and brighter future based in our own history. So thank you, UUs, for your past support. You supported us with the pilot, and thank you for your continuing support. And each of you can do something. You can help us by just spreading the word. This program is open to all students. You've got neighbors, you've got friends, you've got children, you've got grandchildren, you've got a community club, you've got a book club. Please spread the word. It's free, it's on Saturdays, and as I said, I'll be happy to give you more details. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And now I would like to invite up Vicki Carey, who will be telling us about Bidfest.
Good morning. Nope. Do it again. Good morning. There I am. Thank you very much. My name is Vicki Carey, and I'd like to talk to you about our Bidfest, which is November 4th. Note that the time is different. So what we'd like is to make our Bidfest a success and as much fun as possible for all of you. To get to the fun part, we're going to need your participation. First are your donations. After all, the donations are what spur the Bidfest to its greatest success. We're looking for things like dinners, brunches, luncheons, bike rides, golf outings, cooking lessons. What sports do you enjoy that you'd like to share with others? What skill can you teach that you might like to share with others? We know that we UUs enjoy any event where we can get together with our other UUs and do what we like to do best. That is to eat, to talk, tell stories, and just let our hair down. Remember that events offered by members and friends raise the most money. So if you've offered a successful event in the past, offer it again. You don't have to rewrite it, just tell us what year you offered it and we'll take that information right from the catalog it was in. Also, consider offering a vacation home, gift certificates to a local restaurant, a business, your hairdresser, your nail salon. Gift cards are more than welcome and people love to bid on those. We have one small change this year. Historically, non-consumable tangible goods, the things that were sitting on the tables, like previously owned art, decor, jewelry, those have been the hardest for us to sell. So this year at our Bidfest, we will not be auctioning off any tangible items. We will be offering tickets, gift cards, social events, and anything that fits on a sheet of paper or in an envelope. We're glad to help you create your donation at the Bidfest table in the courtyard, which will now be open every week until the Bidfest. If there's something that you'd like to see sold at the Bidfest, just like last year, we have a wish list. We have markers. Come add to our wish list things that you might like to ask somebody to sell that you would be willing to buy. And did I mention volunteering? So it's a great way to get involved. It's a short period of time. This year is a little bit different again. I don't like this microphone. This year we have our volunteer sheets are per each job. So we have 4 areas which will need volunteering. Table hosts and room captains, help with the luncheon. We're still going to have a Saturday luncheon. Monitor bids during live bidding and help our tech team when they need it. Stop at the Bidfest table and pick up your form or sign up for the areas that you'd like to volunteer. The Bidfest team will be happy to answer your questions. We'll be at the table. Volunteering is a good way to help our Bidfest go smoothly. And the last and third requirement, but not the least important, is just having fun. So we're planning a delicious family-style meal this year with luncheons, drinks, appetizers, and of course our live auction during dessert. If you bid successfully on Bidfest Day, you'll have terrific events that you will be able to put on your social calendar for the balance of the year. Plenty of fun to go around, volunteering, bidding, attending the luncheon and live auction, and enjoying your fellow UUs at the social events that you'll have on your calendar for the rest of the year. To donate and volunteer, visit bidfest.org, which is actually not above my head, but it is. bidfest.org, or come to the Bidfest table in the courtyard. Tickets are available right now online and will go on sale live on October 15th. So see you there, and happy bidding. Thank you very much.
So as I'm sure you're aware, this is not Orilla, now known as Don Bryn. Unfortunately, our musical performer today, a family member became seriously ill, and so thank you, Don, for filling in with music, and may our thoughts go with those who can't be with us today. Our opening reading today is from Rabbi Dayna Ruttenberg from her new book on repentance and repair. Forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation, returning to some sort of relationship. That will continue into the future. A person can do real, profound, comprehensive repentance work even if their victim never forgives them. Repentance and forgiveness are separate processes. Forgiveness is much less important than the repair work that the person who caused harm is obligated to do. The Hebrew word that is often translated as repentance is teshuvah, which literally means returning. In modern Hebrew, teshuvah is an answer to a question. You've gotten back to someone. But it also means returning in the sense of, I'll also need a return ticket for the ride. In a spiritual context, teshuvah is about coming back to where we are supposed to be, returning to the person that we are capable of being, coming home in humility and with intentionality to behave as the person we'd like to believe that we are, end quote. So as we light our chalice, or as Anna lights our chalice, let its light lead us on the path to be the person we'd like to believe we are. Please join in now. As we light the chalice, this symbol of Unitarian Universalism, we affirm our second principle, justice. I had the second principle, but the seventh one is just as good. Okay.
Just keeping us real. Okay, today's story is The Road to Sorry, written by Mandy Sweetwater, illustrated by Vanina B. Ahumada. Life can be tricky. There is so much to learn. Problems and obstacles pop up at every turn. It's important that we learn to do what is wise and make sure we know how to apologize. Ouch, porcupine, you quilled my hand. When problems are caused, those around you turn sad. Acknowledge your actions that made them feel bad. Though facing your errors is no piece of cake, you must be responsible for your mistakes. Mistakes often happen, and that is a fact. So when issues occur, how should you react? You can try saying sorry right from the start, but saying I'm sorry plays just a small part. At times, not on purpose, we just didn't know. Somehow, some homework got forgotten, a spill or a crash. Perhaps you said something angry or brash. The way you respond when these things come about will reveal who you are, and there is no doubt. Breathe in. Please pause for a moment after a mistake and consider what action is best to take. Breathe out. Saying I'm sorry might already feel tough, but I'm sorry alone is just not enough. It's often too simple. It's empty and bland, and it doesn't address the big problem at hand. You ought to own up to the things you have done, although it's not easy and not so much fun. Being responsible is always the right way. I've made a mistake is the smart thing to say. Remorse is not something we like to express. The thought of confessing might give you some stress. Though showing regret might feel tricky to you, it's ever so special whenever you do. I'll be careful next time. Talk to the people that you've hurt one-on-one and tell them you see what your actions have done. Show them you hear them and you join in their pain. These are the things that are important for you to explain. Express your mistake in a clear, gentle tone. The errors you've made are entirely your own. What happened was wrong. This you cannot deny. Tell them you get it. There's no need to be shy. I understand that I hurt you. Then talk through each action. Oh my, what a list. And pay good attention so nothing gets missed. Don't be too generic and stick to what is true. No need to confess to the things you didn't do. Let other people share their point of view. Remember that this is not all about you. Give them a chance to explain how they feel. With time, you will see that they are able to heal. So consider this message when you make a mess, forget to do chores, or cause someone stress. You already know that it's not good to lie. Expressing the truth is the best road to try. So next time there's an apology to make, don't just say sorry, that's a mistake. Admit your mishaps. And once that is a trend, the whole wide world will want to be your best friend. The end. Yes. I know, that was a very sweet story, and I'm sorry about the cavity you just got. But this sweet story is a great reminder to all of us grown-ups that most of what we learned about how to be with each other, we actually learned in kindergarten. When you hurt someone, whether it was an intentional or not, and whether it was a physical hurt, like porcupine quilling rabbit, or you said something hurtful, or you did something you thought was funny, like I used to jump out behind the door and scare the bejesus out of my dad, we need to own up to our mistakes, acknowledge the hurt that we've caused, and repair the harm the best that we can. And to repair harm, we need to listen to what the other person feels would repair the damage. None of this is easy, and if it is, then you have some other unpacking to do, but if you're sincere in mending your mishaps, the whole world will want to be your best friend. So now I'm going to invite our younger UUs to join their teachers in their classrooms to learn a bit more about the Jewish New Year and forgiveness. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. We, the Unitarian Universalists of Sarasota, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community through our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. As a person of color, there are always moments of insecurity and an absence of trust when it comes to entering into or participating with a predominantly white audience. It often helps to have a direct invitation, welcoming us in. I see the 8th principle as a way of saying, come and sit with me, there's room for you here. When I consider the importance of the 8th principle, the part that resonates most deeply with my spirit is the covenant to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness. You have given me a sense of belonging. Here I have found room to grow and participate in many ways that have allowed me to support our humanistic and loving principles creatively. My soul has been nurtured and I have thrived. This is potentially another way of working on building a diverse, multicultural, beloved community. Many people of color do not know we exist, and they need us, and can add great value to who we are. While I believe they need us, it is a symbiotic relationship. On our end, minority members can add significant value to who we are. Black people need the sense of community that is found in traditional churches without the traditional constraints. As Unitarians, they can have that with us and the freedom of openly exploring and practicing ancestral and developing spiritual beliefs and ideas. The invitation and freedom to do this is another way we can dismantle racism and oppression in ourselves, our institutions, and the broader community, both here in the United States and the rest of the world. Thank you.
So I invite us to share in a responsive reading, a call and response. I will say something and then I'll ask you to repeat what's on the screen. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference. Ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that we have struck out in anger without just cause, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone, we begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For those and so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. As we go into our time for silence, let us contemplate where we have fallen short in the prior year and how we may rectify it. So tonight is the start of the Jewish holiday Yom Kippur, known as the Day of Atonement. Now, during these days between the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur is known as the Days of Awe. I just like the sound of that, the Days of Awe. Sounds like a movie title. During this time, though, it's a very serious time. Jewish people are asked to take stock of their actions during the prior year, and where they have missed the mark, where they have fallen short, they are required to try and make amends. And although the title of the sermon today is Forgiveness, I think atonement has a different connotation. Right? We can forgive others, or we can seek forgiveness from others, and we can learn to forgive ourselves, but atonement for me is about reconciliation, which requires an act of some sort to bring wholeness to a broken world, a broken relationship, a broken life. Sometimes that reconciliation can be with others, but we must always first reconcile and forgive ourselves and learn and work to improve ourselves before we can even ask forgiveness of others. The Unitarian Universalist Association's common read for this year is entitled Repair and Repentance by Rabbi Dayna Ruttenberg. And Rabbi Ruttenberg writes about Moses Maimonides, a 12th century Jewish philosopher and scholar, and his 5 steps of spiritual repentance. Step 1, naming and owning the harm that you have done. Step 2, starting to change. Step 3, restitution and accepting consequences. Step 4, apology. And step 5, making different choices going forward. Now, I do think it's interesting to note that apology is a later step in the process. Apology without genuine change or restitution is empty. You know, how often have we heard someone apologize and it goes something like, well, if what I have said offended you or anyone, I am sorry. Well, that is not an apology, because that puts the onus on the person that is harmed instead of the person who did the harm. Right? Just really saying, if what I said offended you, not what I said was offensive, right? That's the difference, and it's really key. Right? If you want to apologize, just say what you did, recognize what is wrong with what you did, commit to not doing it again, and work to repair the relationships with those that were harmed. As Ruttenberg says, and I quote, the focus of repentance is not on whether forgiveness is granted, but on whether the person who has done harm engages deeply in the steps of repentance and repair, end quote. You know, when I was a child, I was often told, forgive, but don't forget. And, you know, it's sometimes easier to see when you're harmed, right? It helps it easier for you to see when others are harmed and to make you a little more empathetic. So, you know, for most of my childhood, my parents, who were children in America during World War II, would never buy any German products because of Germany's murder of 6 million Jews in World War II. And I was made to read books and watch movies about the Holocaust, and I was taught to never forget that Christians would hate us, discriminate against us, and at some point would kill us because we were Jewish. Right? There was that, and that was their experiences in the world. Not being allowed to get into certain schools, not being allowed to have certain jobs. But at the same time, I was also taught that we should judge people based on their actions, and that the sins of the parents should not automatically be placed on their children. And post-World War II, Germany took concrete steps to address their role and take responsibility for their part in the tragedy of the Holocaust and to offer reparations to Jews. I would just want to take a second and step back to think about our country and the harms that we have caused to indigenous people, to African Americans who were brought over here slavery and all of their descendants. I think about even the Japanese people who we actually did pay a small amount of reparations to, because during World War II, we put them, not Germans, but Japanese, in essence, concentration camps in this country. But it is interesting. So I just want us all to just remember that. We still have work to do as a country. Interestingly, and talking about Israel now, in the newly formed country in 1951, there was conflict over whether to accept reparations from Germany. There were many Israelis who felt that taking reparations was akin to forgiving and pardoning the Germans for what they had done. And many Israelis actually launched violent protests against the Israeli government at that time. And David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, had to use the Israeli army to quell an uprising that led to the death of many of his fellow Israelis at a time when they couldn't afford to lose any more people. And afterward, Ben-Gurion said, and I quote, "I don't want to run after a German and spit in his face. I don't want to run after anybody. I want to sit here and build here," end quote. And they accepted the reparations. I think there are a number of lessons to be learned from this story. Anger, especially righteous anger, can blind one to reality. The reparations they received were critical to allow the state of Israel to build the infrastructure of that country and allow it to not only survive, but thrive. Right? How often do we in anger do something spiteful that we know is not in our own best interest or in line even with our values, just so that we can feed our resentment towards others? And don't get me wrong, anger is a natural emotion. There are times we should be angry, but the question should be, how do we express that anger? Letting go of our internal anger that no longer serves us is not the same as forgiveness. People do get hurt. People do need to protect themselves. We do need to see that justice is done so that others are not hurt in the same way. But also, we must heal ourselves. If we are going to grow as human beings, to grow past the hate that envelops us, to grow past the hurt that debilitates us, we must let go of our anger and our fear so that we can see our future clearly. Not to eliminate our memories, but to not let our memories of our past control and limit our future. This allows us to move forward and build up our own lives. And that is through and one way that we build and transform our lives is through our communal life together and our communal life with the life of the larger community. So please, help us build up our community by repatriating some of the money that's in your wallets and checkbooks as we take our collection today, 100% of which will go to the Asala Freedom School. Please be as generous as you can. For those online or here on your phone, there's either a QR code or a link on the YouTube video. Let this sacred time begin. Our next reading is as well from On Repentance and Repair from Rabbi Dayna Ruttenberg. The work of repentance all the way through is the work of transformation. It's the work of facing down false stories and engaging with painful reality. It's the work of being open to seeing ourselves as we really are, of understanding that other people's needs and pains are at least as important, if not more so, than our own. It's about figuring out how to be the kind of person who sees others suffering and takes responsibility for any role we might have in causing it. It's about ownership, owning who we have been and what we have done, and also owning the person that we are capable of being. So now I invite you to rise in body and or spirit. We're going to do a hymn instead of the special music, Comfort Me. So another lesson from the story of Germany and its reparations to Israel is that it is easier to forgive someone when they show some repentance for what they did. And it also highlights that there is still a need to ask for forgiveness. That is still part of the process. Holocaust survivor and writer Elie Wiesel said, and I quote, "Some persons do not deserve forgiveness. To be forgiven, the culprit must admit their guilt and ask for forgiveness." In the year 2000, during a speech in the German parliament commemorating the Holocaust, Wiesel said to the assembled German leaders, and I quote, you have been helpful to Israel after the war with reparations and financial assistance, but you have never asked the Jewish people to forgive you." And just 2 weeks later, the German president went to the Israeli Knesset and did just that. He said, and I quote, "Before the people of Israel, I pay humble tribute to those who were murdered, who have no graves at which I could ask their forgiveness. So I ask forgiveness for what the Germans have done, for myself and my generation, for the sake of our children and our children's children, whose future I would see at the side of the children of Israel. And this is how we can prevent passing our own sins of anger onto our children. We need to interact with each other, to know each other, to not be others to each other. We need to consciously be open to the concept of forgiveness and redemption. The two are inextricably tied together. One cannot control whether someone will forgive another. We can only first atone for it through right actions and then ask for forgiveness. And even if the wronged party does not forgive, the party causing the harm can show that they have learned, they have changed, and by doing so, show that transformation is possible. And even if they are never forgiven, they themselves have been transformed into something better. You know, I also want to say there is a power in forgiveness. And it can't be, and I want to be really careful not to be confused with victim blaming. But in the movie, The Power of Forgiveness, there's a story about a man who unconditionally forgave the teenager who murdered his son. And the teen who murdered his son had been living with his grandfather after he'd been abandoned first by his father and then his mother, and he had a lot of anger. And it shows we often don't know the stories behind people's lives. And the teenager, upon being forgiven, said, and I quote, "No one had ever forgiven me for anything before. If he can forgive me for killing his son, I have to be able to forgive others who have abandoned me and who have hurt me." Now that forgiveness changed the grandfather as well, who had been racked with guilt over the incident. The father of the slain boy and the grandfather of the murderer went on to form a foundation, and together they went out speaking to other youth to prevent future violence. Now, who knows how many lives were saved by that one act of forgiveness? This didn't diminish the pain or the loss that either of them felt, but it showed me that forgiveness can have a power on its own. Forgiveness can not only change your life, but it can change other people's lives in the ways that we cannot imagine. You know, our first principle tells us that we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Horrific events like these, or we can pick out any horrific event that happened. There are plenty every day of the week to hear about. Tests our first principle. It really does. And it is true that inherent worth is not lived worth, but inherent worth and dignity means that it is there within all, right? Waiting to be nurtured, waiting to be lifted up, waiting to be forgiven. And just like the story of this young boy who didn't understand the concept of forgiveness until it was given to him, my experiences have shown me that people are much more willing to forgive others and accept forgiveness from others much more quickly than they are ever able to forgive themselves. You know, I saw this for a year, part of becoming a minister, I served as a chaplain in a hospital. And on the floor I served on individuals' medical conditions were often due to their poor life choices. And in almost all cases, they were aware of that and held tremendous guilt about it. And so I would ask them whether they believed that God forgave them. In almost all cases, almost all, without hesitation, they believed, they answered yes. They believed in an all-forgiving, all-loving God. They weren't Unitarians, but it's amazing, when you're dying, you believe in an all-forgiving, all-loving God. And then I would ask them, well, if they believed that, if God forgave them, could they forgive themselves? And sadly, most of them found that to be the most difficult part. And I think it's the most important part. Self-forgiveness was a lesson it took me a long, long time to learn. It's a spiritual practice unto itself that needs to be practiced consistently. I will often say I am my own worst critic, right? I have found for myself it is beneficial to look back on, what I have done, what has worked, what has not worked. How could I have handled the situation differently? Often these thoughts come up when I am meditating and trying not to think. That's how meditation works. I look at every experience I have as a learning experience, to incorporate how I missed the mark and to do better as I move forward. And I have found that the key to my happiness is the ability to be able to forgive myself for my faults. It allows me to live in the present moment, being who I am, not filled with fear of making a mistake. Self-forgiveness about the acceptance that we are not perfect and that we will never be perfect. And that should not be our goal. But that acceptance should never be an excuse, though, to not stop learning, to not stop improving. We must continue that all the time. But it is an acceptance that we cannot control the universe. Sad, but true. We often don't even control our own personal universe. But if we realize that we are interdependent with all that is, we realize that, yes, we can impact others with our actions, but the converse is true. Others impact us with their actions, which means there are things we cannot control. There's a musical piece, Kol Nidra, that is always played on the first night of Yom Kippur every year. And it is asking for forgiveness in advance for the vows that we will break in the coming year, knowing that we are imperfect beings, recognizing that we are certainly going to miss the mark sometimes. It is also asking us not to make frivolous promises, but rather think very carefully before we make a commitment. And the acceptance of our own imperfection allows an opening up to be compassionate with ourselves and be gentle with ourselves. Being compassionate consistently with ourselves, we can find peace within. And once we find peace within, it allows us to learn to be compassionate with others, knowing that they are going through something that we have no idea. By working together with others in compassionate ways, our interdependent web of life becomes more whole, more solid. And when compassion is the practice we use every day in every action that we take, we will live in a more compassionate world. So as you go forth, be compassionate with yourselves and be compassionate with others. Forgive yourselves, and when possible, forgive others. Do and be good as you can, as good as you can on any given day. May it be so. Please rise in body and our spirit for our closing hymn, Lean on Me. Our closing words, they said, the work of repentance demands curiosity, care, and a willingness to face hard things with bravery and honesty. While we can't undo the past, we can address the present with integrity and endeavor to create a future that is much more whole than anything we can imagine from here. So let us begin. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice with the words that are on the screen. We extinguish this flame, not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you all for your presence here today. May you go out and do and be good.